This episode is brought to you by Denver Fringe Festival. Denver's favorite Choose Your Own Adventure Arts Extravaganza is back. The 7th annual Denver Fringe Festival runs June 3rd through June 7th. Catch over 80 shows at 20 venues around Denver, including the Fringe Art Show at 2 different venues. Got kiddos? Check out Kids Fringe, a mini festival for families with free kids shows at 3 different locations. Tickets are just $20 for a show or $95 for a full festival pass. Tickets and passes are on sale now at denverfringe.org. Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. So today we're talking about how Colorado's weather has impacted small agriculture producers, some tips and tricks for getting the most out of a farmer's market, and so much more. Peter Wanberg, co-owner of the City Park and Lafayette Farmers Markets, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So Peter, there's been a lot of reporting on this, but I wanted to hear from you as someone who runs urban farmers markets. Will we have peaches this year?
Yes, we will have peaches. Peaches are generally this year, they're going to be coming from the Palisade region. Usually we have peaches are coming from a broader region. You've got Delta County, Hotchkiss, Paonia, folks like Ela Family Farms and Top Fruits, which people know if they go to farmers markets. They experienced a total fruit loss this year. Palisade had some fruit loss because of the cold snap, but not nearly as devastating of results. And so we still are going to have peaches at Front Range farmers markets, but we will have smaller volumes.
What about those producers that you mentioned, like Ela, that folks would know really well? And maybe, are they not going to just see them at the farmer's market? Like, will they have some sort of presence? Like, I'm just thinking about, I go to the farmer's market and I don't see my favorite vendor. Yeah,
totally. So people are trying to figure it out. There's different things going on this year. For example, Top Fruit is going to partner with another producer that they work closely with, Rancho Durazno. So they're going to be coming with kind of a co-branded tent. So they're trying to navigate what it looks like to have a total fruit loss this year. Ela is going to be showing up. They have an amazing program on their farm. They have these crazy sustainability initiatives. But one of them is that a lot of their fruit that they can't sell at farmers markets or that don't necessarily go into wholesale, they get processed for packaged goods. So they have a very low waste situation happening on the farm. That stuff that gets processed into packaged good, applesauce and dried apples and all that stuff, they're going to come with some of that packaged products just to show up and kind of like make sure that their brand is present at farmers markets this year. But generally speaking, you're mostly going to see Palisade growers at farmers markets this year. One of the hard parts about that is there are crops that are specific to Delta County. For example, apples. You're going to see almost no apples at farmers markets this year.
Oh my gosh.
So those are typically where almost all Colorado apples are coming from. And so there are going to be crops that that aren't going to show up. So peaches, Palisade has a huge peach harvest. So they're going to support that effort, but there are other fruits that you're just not going to see.
Interesting. I didn't think about the apples thing, but that feels like such a staple of any farmer's market is an apple.
And Ela brings 30-something varietals of apples to farmers markets each year. It's crazy. And they are unbelievable growers. And it's just all of it is lost this year. So big impacts. Unless you're super educated or dialed in with farmers market stuff, you might not necessarily realize that because you might go and, get your box of peaches for the summer and whatever. But yeah, big impacts for sure.
So that's kind of, I'm thinking about okay, we've had there's a drought, obviously, this strange winter that I think is impacting a lot of growing, these late spring cold snaps. Those things have impacted our garden in the front yard. So what is it that's impacting these regions differently? Or what is it really? Is there something that we should know that we just aren't understanding? Because I'm not a farmer.
Yeah. And I mean, it's important to remember that farmers always roll with the seasons. Farming is unpredictable and weather isn't the same year to year. Obviously, there's some big picture changes that might be happening in weather patterns. And there's also small things that happen year to year that are just weird. This year is pretty crazy. Ela's never had, these Western Slope or Delta County farmers have never had this sort of devastating fruit loss in recent history. So 30, 40 years, this is the worst. And it's happening because there was an unseasonably warm winter and spring, as we know. So stuff just started kicking off earlier than normal, and those buds were more developed when those hard freezes occurred. So hard freezes in spring is not particularly unusual, and they have all these ways to combat it. If you've seen pictures of, putting up fires by trees, and people have all sorts of warming techniques. There's mineral sprays they can put on the buds. There's fans that kind of like continue circulating air. There's all these things that they can do. But they were just, because of the unseasonably warm spring, those buds were just more mature than normal. And so then when you got that hard, cold snap, it was pretty cold, and it just kind of took everything out. So that was the combination of weather and pattern that led to Delta County not being able to see that fruit happen. And we're seeing obviously all sorts of kind of strange things happening. We've got two different things. We've got a warm winter and a warm spring, and then we've got drought issues also happening. So those are kind of happening concurrently this year. And that's creating two separate sets of challenges for farmers, both in the Western Slope, but also here in the Front Range. Like you were talking about your garden being, all sorts of weird this year. We're dealing with the same thing. Our bees this year, we got bees in our backyard. And it's been like the craziest year for keeping bees ever, because it's been so warm. So they keep multiplying like crazy and harvesting really early. But yeah, farmers are in all sorts of different boats when it comes to the weather and the water. So do you want to talk about anything specifically? Because we can kind of dive into whatever you want.
No, I mean, I think that's just a good thing for folks to remember, is like all of these things that could be impacting farmers. But something I think that is also interesting is this is not just about the crops, right? If someone has a total crop loss, that's like one thing, like we're not seeing that fruit at the market. But what else does that mean for farmers? I mean, there's labor involved. This is their livelihood. This is a lot of folks' livelihoods.
Yeah, they do have some level of protection against just, they're not devastated, they're not going to not come back next year. There's insurance, there's there's crop insurance that they are tapping into this year. And then, for example, like we talked about, Top Fruit coming with a fruit partner in a different growing region and trying to just kind of like show up, stay present, getting through the season. Some of the other effects that you might not see that we had kind of talked about were, there are H-2A workers, and there are obviously workers that are not going to be able to have employment this year. So that's kind of the whole back end side of that is, yeah, there's definitely labor and people that rely on these sorts of things to have work. And yeah, when you have total crop loss, there's no work. That's not true. There's not no work, but there's obviously there's no harvesting work. There's no pruning, picking work. That sort of thing is drastically reduced.
Yeah, that's just something I find so interesting is the whole ecosystem of what it means beyond just not having access to that as a consumer. But I want to let's zoom in on an average farmers market trip this year. Like, what are some of the common things that people buy at farmers markets?
Just in general?
Just in general.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we think of things in kind of three categories. So we think of farmers, obviously, and we think of, even within the context of farmers, ranchers, dairy, things that are kind of raw goods that are being produced here in Colorado. So those are kind of one group. And that's really that's the heartbeat of a farmer's market. That's the core of what makes up a farmer's market, and why we're even there in the first place is, connecting producers that are growing those things here in Colorado to consumers here in Colorado that can be participating in that local food ecosystem. The next group we would think about and talk about is it's really those like pantry good items, and those are still produced here in Colorado, mostly locally. Mostly, if you're talking about City Park, for example, that's mostly Denver companies, and that's like preserved items, pickles, jarred things, jams, but then it's also the breads, the bakeries, the anything that you would get that you would be able to kind of like store that's one off of that raw good being produced. And so, yeah, there's a whole host of things that people are buying within that category.
This episode is brought to you by the Central City Opera. The 94th Central City Opera Festival opens June 27th. Since 1932, Central City Opera has been one of Colorado's favorite arts traditions, bringing world-class talent to an 1878 opera house just 1 hour west of Denver. This summer, Central City Opera is celebrating Colorado's 150th anniversary and 250 years of American independence with an anniversary all their own, the 70th anniversary of their world premiere of The Ballad of Baby Doe. The show tells the scandalous historical love story of Silver Baron Horace Tabor, who has left his wife Augusta for Baby Doe, which rocked Denver society and remains a staple of Colorado history. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with Baby Doe. I want to see this show so bad. I know it's a scandalous story because Augusta Tabor doesn't get the credit she deserved for being a very cool lady. But there's something intriguing about Baby Doe. If you've ever seen pictures of her, she's gorgeous. And there's a reason there was a mining-themed restaurant named after her in Denver, because we love Baby Doe. Other shows this summer include The Marriage of Figaro, Masterclass, CCO in Concert, and so much more. Tickets start at $32 and seats are going fast, so don't miss out. The festival runs June 27th through August 2nd. Visit centralcityopera.org to learn more. This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Listen, I've been the owner of many a jumpsuit, a tracksuit, and the occasional jogger set. I mean, it's Colorado, baby. We're all about athleisure and wearing our inside clothes outside. But somehow, Cozy Earth has managed to make something that's both comfy and cute. Seriously, Cozy Earth's bamboo brush jogger set is my new fave go-to. It's all black, it's lightweight, and it has a tapered fit that doesn't make you look like, as Oprah once said in 1997, a schlumpadinka. No, I look awesome in this thing. And Cozy Earth stands behind everything they make. A 30-day return policy on all products, a lifetime warranty on the clothing, and hassle-free returns if anything isn't right. This Memorial Day, give yourself the kind of comfort that lives with you all day, not just the moment you get home. Cozy Earth's brushed bamboo jogger set and lake house clogs are designed to keep you cozy, comfortable, and actually relaxed all season long. Comfort lives here. Head to CozyEarth.com and use our code CozyDenver for up to 30% off, but only for a limited time. This exclusive offer runs May 18th through June 1st only, so don't wait. That's code CozyDenver at CozyEarth.com for up to 30% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on CityCast Denver. What is something that people might not think about being available at a farmer's market that's maybe a surprising thing, or I'm just thinking about someone who's maybe going for the first time and is thinking, I'm going to get the staples like you said, but is there something that is unique to farmers markets or something that you've seen as someone that operates these spaces?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's always gaps in what's being produced locally. So if you're going to shop at a farmer's market, staying flexible and being able to kind of roll with the seasons and roll with actually your grocery list, that can be really helpful because obviously not everything is produced here locally. Cheeses is one thing that we always struggle with, trying to get someone that's actually producing cheese here, because it's we have rules around what we want people to bring or what we want vendors to be able to bring to the farmers markets. So we want producers, not resellers, for example. But that's a great example. Cheese this year, we finally were like, hey, we need to get somebody that's just bringing in Colorado cheeses so we can sell them at the farmers market. So we're a producers focused farmers market, but there's, actually just maybe 2 exceptions to that rule in the market. Cheese is one of them because people want cheese so bad.
I know. I was it's not that there's not a market for cheese. I'm a cheese freak.
I know. That's the thing. But, outside of big cheese states, it's just not a huge production item here in Colorado. So it's hard to find.
I never thought about that. Well, anyone listening, there's a gap that needs to be filled if you want to start producing cheese locally.
Is there an item that you've gone looking for at farmers markets that you haven't been able to find? That's a good question for you, actually. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I do think the thing that I love about farmers markets is that I want honeycomb. I want the honeycomb itself. I love raw honey. I'll buy that anywhere. once you buy like honey from a person it's so different than what's
Mhm.
in the store. And so I would just say that's the specialty thing that I'm always looking for is the
Yeah.
honeycomb. I just
You can
love it.
get honeycomb at the farmers markets for sure.
Okay.
You can, I mean, like, so Flower Street Farm and Bjorn's at City Park, like they both will. I don't know. Sometimes they go in seasons though, so they'll, like it just goes quick, and they only produce a certain amount of frame. Basically, like it's the frames without they're not putting frames in there. They're like putting the wooden frame. I'm explaining this poorly, but they're putting in like the
When
wooden
you're talking
frame,
about
but
the
not.
beehive that they're
Yeah,
producing
but they're
from.
not like putting the plastic piece in. So the bees are building the comb instead of building on the comb that you put in. So that's why, like, but they're
Oh,
not just always producing honeycomb.
sure.
There's two different ways of producing that, like liquid or raw honey, and then the comb. So my wife's a beekeeper. She's going to be like, you explained that so poorly, but
No, but it's good
um,
to think about is like that's maybe why the availability is limited or only different certain times is how the bees are how you are I don't know how the beekeepers
yeah,
are handling
yeah. And when
producing
it
it.
comes, people grab it really quick. And so it just, I don't know, maybe somebody needs to produce more honeycomb.
So I buy a lot of tomatoes. I personally don't like tomatoes, but my son and my husband eat tomatoes like they're going out of
Okay.
style. And
Hmm.
something I think about at the grocery store is uniformity is king at the grocery store.
Hmm.
Like I'm looking for a big, bright red round tomato or those perfect looking cherry tomatoes. But what is different about buying a tomato at a farmer's market, like directly from the person who grew it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, there's a couple of products that this is a great question for a couple of products because there's very easy answers. For example, like tomatoes and the other kind of like low hanging fruit, pardon the language there, is peaches. So tomatoes and peaches, they're both really sensitive products. And so if you're going through distribution channels, you have to harvest those before they're ripe in order to distribute them. Because if they're getting shipped, and if there's any sort of lead time between when it's harvested and when it's sold and consumed, that those products go downhill really fast, and they get bruised really easily, and they're really delicate and sensitive. Whereas if you're growing a tomato and you're waiting until it's perfectly ripe and you're picking it and you're bringing it to the farmer's market the next day, you're going to be eating that tomato at the absolute perfect stage. Same thing goes with peaches. So you have the incredible miracle of front range farmers markets is that you have crazy people that are picking peaches, and then they're driving. Basically, they're leaving their houses at like 1 or 2 a.m. or like midnight. Like, they're leaving crazy hours, and they're driving them to the front range farmers markets and then running like a mini distribution within that. And they're doing this every single week. So like getting peaches straight off, like that have been harvested the day before, is like an absolute like gift that we get in front range farmers markets. Whereas even if you're going to like fruit stands and grocery stores, even during Colorado harvest, um, you don't necessarily get the same situation because they haven't been ripened fully on the vine and then picked at perfect peak. You
Yeah.
get that sugar maturation all the way, and then you're eating it like the next day and it's perfect. So it's like, it's an unbelievable experience. Tomatoes, same thing. Like if you're getting growers that are doing a super high quality tomato production and they're bringing it that next day to the farmer's market, like it's going to be a tomato like you've never had. So you might not like tomatoes, but you know what? Keep trying
I
because they're freaking amazing.
I
Like
know.
tomatoes, when they're like thoughtful and like well harvested, and
Yeah.
next day they're like the flavor profiles are just such a huge spectrum. They can be all over the map of like umami and acids and like all these beautiful flavor profiles. So keep trying, B. Keep giving it a go.
Well, this is just having me think too that about the beauty of the farmers market, like you said, is sometimes we go to the grocery store and like something's being packed and shipped from South America
Right.
and brought here. And when you think about the reality of when fruit and vegetables are the most flavorful, part of it is I'm sure mass production has a lot to do with its flavor, but also just timing and how different that experience is. Like I was working on a project we passed through Mancus and there was just a fruit stand and we bought some strawberries and my colleague was like, oh, this strawberry tastes like strawberries that I remember
Yeah.
from being a kid and growing up near a farm. And I tasted it and I was like, oh, yeah, the strawberries we eat from the grocery store, they don't even taste like anything sometimes.
Yeah.
And this is why, right? I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but part of it is you're getting a strawberry that's had to travel thousands of miles on a boat in a shipping
Yeah.
container to get here versus the crazy producer that wakes up
Right.
and picks it and drives it to you, essentially.
Yeah. And that's the trade-off of being able to get something whenever you want it, which is a miracle in and of itself. Like that's amazing too. The fact that we've like
Sure.
we've created like a food distribution system that you can get access to everything, but it comes at a cost. And the cost is, I mean, I would say there's many, many costs associated with that. Um, you know, talking just, I mean, you mentioned a lot of things and I could kind of deep dive into any one of those aspects, but like, yeah, I mean, so just like the intention of a small producer, first of all, growing something, like it's going to be a product with a lot more thought, and that thought usually comes with a higher nutrient density. It usually comes with a much higher complexity and flavor profile, and that's just the product itself. Not even talking about the shipping and the distribution, kind of like logistical aspects in between. But yeah, I mean, you know, when you're getting something from a grocery store and it's being shipped from another country, like, yeah, you're losing a lot of aspects about that food that really makes it wonderful. But you're satisfying the convenience of it and the availability.
Yeah, I was going to say access is super important here too. Is like something else I think about with farmers markets is they're lovely, but the reality is sometimes this is more expensive produce and grocery bills are already really tough. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, at this state in the game with the economy. And so I think the general assumption maybe is that farmers markets are more expensive. How do you approach that conversation around cost? Like,
Yeah,
you know?
that's a good question. I mean, I think generally farmers markets are more expensive. It, I'd say, you know, these days, like Whole Foods is expensive too. So comparing like farmers markets to Whole Foods is probably more akin. But farmers markets to most grocery stores, yeah, you're gonna pay a premium for those products. And I mean, I think the first reason is just generally economics. It costs a lot to one, like here in Colorado, like land access is really expensive, water is really expensive, cost of labor is really expensive, housing is really expensive. All those things are adding up, and then you're dealing with a really small economies of scale. And so when you're producing something on a small scale, you're not necessarily going to have the luxury of slimming up your margin and hitting a high volume. So when you're dealing with, you know, a small margin and you have to make a living and, you know, make sure that you put food on your family's table, there's just a certain margin that you have to catch, and that creates the pricing that it creates. It's just a product of our economic environment and the scale that people are growing at. So it's just kind of you know, it's just the economic reality. And I think one thing that's important to remember is like, yes, they can be more expensive. One, farmers aren't getting rich off of this. Like they're all passionate people that are doing this because they love doing what they're doing and they believe in creating a nutritious product that is going to nourish people in a way that they don't necessarily see them being nourished in the typical food ecosystem. And that is, I would say, like after doing dozens and dozens of farm tours and getting to know farmers really well, that is the predominant motivation from farmers that are coming to farmers markets, is that they're just like wildly passionate people that believe in what they're doing. And they want to see our food system change to being something that is small scale, that is focused on relational buying and focused on nutrient density and well-being of their customers. So that really is like, I truly know that nobody's getting rich off of this. And so like when you're looking at that pricing, like that's just the price of sustainability. Like that's the price of
Yeah.
farming. And then, you know, the other side of that is being like, you're paying more for a product and you should be paying more for that product. I think that that's like something that we should believe in and pay into, because you're getting so much more out of that product than you would the comparable product at the grocery store. So it's
Yeah.
not like comparing apples to apples. It's like comparing apples to oranges when you're talking about that, because you're talking about two different products. Like we were talking about with tomatoes, you're getting something that's going to be like, you know, I'm thinking about Steve Croft from Croft Family Farms. Of like, he's got this crazy reverse osmosis water system, and like the amount of inputs that he's putting into soil. Like he thinks of soil like holy ground. So you have a farmer like
Yeah.
this who's growing these tomatoes, where you're like, these are the best tomatoes you've ever had in your life, and he's harvesting the day before, and it's just him and his family there on the farm, and he's bringing them to the farmer's market, and like that tomato should be more expensive because it's a better product. It's creating more, more nutrient for your body. You're investing in a relationship, you're investing in sustainability, you're investing in all these environmental factors. There's a million reasons why that is a different
It's worth
product
it.
than going to the grocery store and picking something that was machined or that was harvested by a machine or whatever. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, it is different. And so there's a bunch of factors that create those price differences. And there's a reason for it.
I was going to say, I think it's just something really good to think about is like what you are paying for is a better product, but also this sort of dream of what it could be like if we were able to have sustainable local produce in, something that's more accessible. But the more people that buy it, I assume the better it would, it's just like feeding that economy versus the larger
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think it's also just it's an intentional investment. We want to pay for things that we believe in. And I think that we've also artificially, because of large scale farming, monocropping, and economies of scale and other models, we've just adopted the fact that food should probably be less expensive. When the reality is like, no, when you go to a farmer's market, like that's actually just what food costs when you're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And we are building these big systems that create efficiency, but efficiency has a cost. And I think there's a lot of unseen costs with that efficiency.
I want to talk about local competition because I live in close to the neighborhood of Harvey Park, and this farmers market that just opened up is everyone's talking about it. Do
Yeah,
you
that's awesome.
do you see a new farmers market coming to town as competition for your farmers markets?
No, I think there's tons of space out there for farmers markets. And the hope is that obviously like we care about what we're doing and we believe in seeing like local food ecosystems flourishing in the city of Denver. Um, so we think there's tons of space for this sort of thing to propagate. The other thing is we want to see our producers do well. We want to see them selling as much of their product as they can and growing and reinvesting in their businesses. And so if people are doing a good job of opening farmers markets and they're providing foot traffic and volume for those farms and those food producers and then those prepared food vendors, like we want to see those farmers markets flourish because it creates flourishing with those vendors, and that's a win for everybody.
Yeah, and also I would just say anecdotally, I have never been to a farmers market in Denver that's not crazy packed. So
Yeah.
obviously the audience is plenty there. It's
Yes.
just,
Yeah. And it's just every year it feels like it gets busier. And so it does seem like that there's, that culture is growing. And that's really great. We want to see that.
yeah. So before we go, Peter, what's your farmers market hack? Like, what's the secret to having a successful trip to the farmers market?
A little bit of planning goes a long way at the farmer's market. For me, something if I forget, like, or don't, like I'm obviously like organizing it. So sometimes I'm a little hectic before farmer's market days. If I don't bring my cooler or like a cooler bag or something to keep certain things at temperature, then I have failed the farmer's market day. So if I'm getting my groceries, I've got to have a cooler bag or a cooler or a wagon or something that I can actually like make sure that those greens are staying nice looking and crispy, and that those, anything that you're buying that might be freezer items, that those have a home. I'd say that's one thing. The other thing is like the hack is kind of to like, there's planning on one side, and then the other side of things is like no planning. Relax and roll with the seasons because you don't necessarily know, like, unless you're following it really closely, like you're going to show up and there's going to be veg and fruit there that you don't necessarily plan for. So just rolling with the seasons, talking to farmers, figuring out what's there, and then taking that and kind of like integrating it into your meal plan for the week. Like that is absolutely the most fun way to participate in the farmers market. And you're gonna like eat just so well if you are just open to, getting a bunch of veg and then figuring out what to do with it when you're at home.
Yeah, taking advantage of what's in season or what's there that week. I think that's a really good. I'm a psychotic planner about food, and so that would be a real challenge for me, but I also
Yeah,
appreciate the challenge of being like, "Oh, maybe working with a vegetable I've never actually eaten before even," which is
for
cool.
sure. I would say try that. I know it's hard for the type A folks out there, but give it a go and eat some tomatoes.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll report back if I ever love tomatoes. I'll try so hard. But my 4-year-old, this man will eat any vegetable. I don't know how we got so lucky, but we just
Ah, good for
showed
him.
him things all through his like trying new foods, and
Oh, one
he's very
hack, if
adventurous.
you're a
Yeah.
parent, like, and you're trying to get your kids to eat certain things, like we've seen this over and over and over again, going through the farmer's market and letting kids pick stuff out. And like that changes the game. They go home and they're like super excited. Our kids have been on a huge carrot kick recently. And same thing with tomatoes. Like they'll get tomatoes from the farmer's market and be like super excited to eat them at home. So I would say, yeah, there's a parenting hack in there.
That's a genius idea because they really, they want to be their own person. And if they picked that vegetable out, then you're right. They're more likely to eat it. Oh, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Try that. I may take some of my friends with their kids who are a lot more picky than mine, but that's a
Don't
great
tell them.
idea. Well, Peter, thank you so much. This was a really wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why don't you take a minute to tell Elah Family Farms about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya!